Hello, everyone. My name is John McKay, and I'm the Member of Parliament for Scarborough Guildwood. This is the latest in our series of conversations with some of the leaders in East Scarborough. I'm informally calling it my Righteous Saints leaders. We've had an interview with Deep Habib, who's the #2 saint at East Scarborough Storefront, and of course Wisdom Teddy, who's the principal at UTSC, and Craig Stevenson at Centennial College, and Liz Buller at Scarborough Health Network, and Salima David at 5 and 2 Soup Kitchen. A remarkable group of people who are doing remarkable things. And so it's my pleasure to be interviewing Utcha Sawyer, who I hope, Utcha, you are joining this illustrious list of saints. Now, I noticed that you, of all of my saints, are the only homegrown saint.
That's right.
Yeah, you were born in Scarborough.
That's right. Born in Scarborough General, 8th floor, 1977.
Yeah, yeah.
in June,
Well,
June.
Okay, well, we're getting all the details. My goodness. And where did you live in Scarborough?
So I grew up actually at Markham and Eglinton. My first school was Mason Road. I left Mason Road, I think in grade 1 to go to William Treadway. And I went to Treadway French immersion all the way up
Really?
Into high school. Went to high school in Scarborough.
Which high school?
We ended up moving further east. So I went to Midland for many years before it turned into its new incarnation.
Oh yeah. I remember we would play basketball against Midland and Cedarbury and all those sort of stuff.
Right.
I played for West Hill, and then I played for Laurier.
Oh,
I was at West Hill quite a number of years ago now, and I was watching the kids practice. I don't think I would make that team.
My dad actually went to West Hill when they first moved from Jamaica. He was, I think, like the only black student at the school that would have been like 1968 when they first came. And then he was a basketball, he went all the way to U of T playing basketball, coming out of West Hill back in the 70s. So,
Oh, really?
yeah, early.
So I hate to admit it, but he would be actually at West Hill after I had left West Hill. Okay, Utcha, this interview is not going well.
For you.
Yeah.
It's all good.
So you would actually know that at the time. Well, no, you wouldn't know, but your dad would know that at the time. Morningside Avenue was a rural street.
That's right. My grandparents had their first home in Canada was on Old Kingston Road. So I remember coming there as a child, and it was like farm, like it was a farm, rural. It seemed rural to us, coming from Markham and Eglinton. So I remember, when it wasn't as developed.
Well, my parents were market gardeners on Morningside Avenue.
Okay.
We had 14 acres on down by the lake, not far from the East Scarborough Boys and Girls Club. And I noticed that I assume you and your husband are farming 80 acres.
That's right. Yeah.
They describe it as a hobby farm. Who are we kidding here? 80 acres is a serious farm. Tell us about it.
We steward 80 acres, but we actually farm about 2 acres a year. And we do just organic produce. I'm coming to East Scarborough Boys and Girls Club from spending about 9 years in the food equity movement. So very, very passionate about food access and making sure our communities have access to fresh, healthy, and nutrient-dense food. And when it came time for us to make the big leap into home ownership, we actually decided instead of moving, we were actually considering moving to Markham. Why don't we just take the leap and go for our big goal, which was to own a small hobby farm of our own for our children, our family. And we did it. This April is 8 years that we've been living out there. you
Where
know.
where is up there?
So I'm in Kirkfield. I don't know if,
Kirkfield up.
yeah,
That's in Peterborough, isn't it?
no, it's in, it's just about 15, 20 minutes east of Beaverton, if you know Beaverton off of the
I
Trent.
know. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the
So
Trent Canal system.
that's right. I'm right off of the number two lift lock.
Okay.
So
Highway 48.
that's right. You take the Markham Road all the way up. It turns into Highway 48. I always
And
tell.
you do that commute on a daily basis?
Well, I do. You know, when I lived in Toronto, we lived just on the cusp of Malvern, so we were at Shepherd and Markham Road, and I was working downtown at Dufferin and Bloor. It'd take me 2 hours to get to work, and I was taking a bus, the RT, a train, and then another bus. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, at that time, moving out there, right now it takes me about an hour. Like when we finish up, I have some stuff to do. So by the time I leave here, I'd probably take maybe an hour, 20 minutes
Yeah.
drive. So I think now they're saying that's called commutable.
Well, I could talk about farming and talk about this, but I noticed because we drive along Highway 48 quite frequently,
Okay.
that is actually an area that's really opening up for agriculture because the land is so rich.
It
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Ontario is the best land in Canada. They say, like,
yeah.
as far
Yeah,
as
that's class one
oh yeah,
agricultural land there.
oh yeah.
Big.
Anything below the shield is you know, black gold, as we refer to it. So
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
they say Toronto is built on the best farmland in the country, to be
Yeah,
honest.
it really is a shame. I know when my father market gardened on Morningside Avenue, that loam was just absolutely lovely. Well, I
Beautiful.
didn't intend that this become an agricultural discussion. My
Oh no,
goodness,
we can do
you do
it.
have a day job, I'm told.
Well, it's a great segue into what we've been doing here. You know, like say for the last 7 weeks, we've gone full blown into emergency food services. So
Mm.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but our club has been providing a range of food services for the local community that's only seems to be doubling, you know, every week.
Now,
Uh,
what does food services mean? What are you doing in that?
So what we're doing is we have some families that are a list of families that have been receiving our family food meal kits. They're like a hamper style of aggregation of food that's put together. So some fresh produce, some you know, dairy, grains, just a mix of different grocery produce products, so that it takes a bit of a ease off of them financially, especially a lot of our families have been heavily impacted by the by COVID-19, and just like all of the um, unfortunate challenges that come when you look at the social, you know, social
Yeah,
economic
yeah.
disparity. So we have about 500 families, maybe just over, that are receiving twice a week hampers or the family meal kits that are delivered directly to their homes. We also are providing 200 and just over 200, or sorry, 2,500, so 2,500 meals weekly that are going, individual prepared meals that are going out to families, youth, individuals, a lot of seniors in the local community who are have developed, you know, just a paranoia about even going outside because
Mm.
they feel that
Yeah,
they're, you know, the highest risk. We've
right.
also, you know, with the support of the city and the province and some additional funding coming in from the federal government, have been able to provide ride shares to help a lot of our isolated seniors get to appointments and not worry about having to, you know, get on public spaces that they may still have some reservations about. So, you know, we also are doing a Friday free lunch at the club. And last week we served just under 700 meals. So that's people driving in, drive by, kind of like your drive-through window. They can ask for either vegetarian or a meat protein, and we also have families and individuals that can walk in as well.
Wow.
And so we've been doing that with the support of President's Choice Children's Charity for the last 4 weeks, and it's been pretty successful.
Were you doing this all prior to COVID?
No. So
Oh my goodness! So you ramped from zero to this
that's
in the
right.
course of 10 weeks or so.
That's right. The reality is that, you know, we did an assessment during the March break when we started to see, we started to look at other countries and just how they were recovering, and just the countries that were hit before us, and looking at the time span that they were processing in. And we realized at that time we were looking at about 4 to 6 weeks at that time. So we did a needs assessment in the local community, and food came out paramount as the number one concern. And so we looked at how, we could scale up some of the services that we were offering. So we've always done meal services, but we did them for after school programs and our licensed childcare and our early on services. We always did hampers, but we did them once a year. We actually scaled up last year to twice a year. So we, instead of just doing them during the winter holidays, we decided to do them at Thanksgiving as well. So we were looking forward to planning, and we always thought that was so much to plan. But in this short period of time, I think, I think a combination of my experience in the food world, like a food access world, and then just a phenomenal team that we work with here, we were able to mobilize and transition our space so that it was effective to meet the needs of the local community.
Yeah, less basketball and more food is what it boils down to.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
I
My
mean,
goodness.
a lot of children, the reality is that our space, naturally, we feed in our after school programs, our youth programs, we always provide meals. And a lot of those meals are for some of these children and youth are the only meals that they're going to eat for the evening. And so recognizing that, and then knowing that there were additional strains and impacts on families, we decided, what we could do was use our strength within our sector to pull and aggregate the needs for the local community around food access. And we also are doing stuff. We've even now been given pet food. So we have dog food and cat food that's going out to homeowners, especially our seniors. People are not considering that a lot of seniors are not online. They are not, they're still, a lot of mental unrest about what, contracting COVID, period. So you'd be so surprised that some folks have still not even left, their front porch. So a lot of times there's a whole, there's a rippling effect on these services because our staff may be the only people that they talk to for the week, or that they engage with in the week. And
I was up to UTSC 2-3 weeks ago now.
Okay.
And Global Medic was, with the help of UTSC volunteers, were organizing these lentils.
Yes.
I don't know, have you been able to take advantage of that program?
Yes. So we have a strong partnership with them, and we have leveraged every partnership that we have in the community to ensure that we are getting every week our coffers are full to get out to the local community. So yes, we benefited from UTSC, which has been a phenomenal partner in so many ways. City of Toronto, the South Scarborough cluster coordinators have been doing a phenomenal job of getting resources to us, PPE for our staff. United Way has also just been just amazing and real great partners. Like I said, the President's Choice Children's Charity, just allowing us to really take the reins and run with what the needs are for the local community without too many restraints, understanding that we have been serving this community since 1968 and we have a long standing relationship. We understand and know the community in a way that many agencies just may not.
I agree with that. Ever since I've been a politician for 23 years now, the East Scarborough Boys and Girls Club has been the kind of the go-to organization in the community. Your immediate predecessor, Ron Rock, was just a tremendous guy. So if you pull out a magic ball or something like that, and you look at post-COVID, assuming there is a post-COVID, that's another issue. How will East Scarborough Boys and Girls Club do business? Well, for argument's sake, say this time next year, what do you see as East Scarborough doing if in fact there is either a vaccine or the pandemic has receded to the point where life is relatively normal?
Well, I think for us, we identify different gaps and needs through COVID. We understand deeper a lot of the underlying disparities that exist. Part of our strategic plan for this year was to look at how we can strategically approach some of those areas of need, and I think COVID has forced us to really respond and rise to the occasion around those things. So in addition to what we already do, with we serve about 6,800, even more individuals annually. This, as you know, I think I shared with you, we're actually closing this week our youth center. So we've expanded to have a standalone youth center at 62 Orchard.
Hmm.
Um, that youth center will be in full operation. We have been successful in getting services for youth around youth employment from the city of Toronto. So there'll be a youth employment center there, an arts
This
center.
is the one in the church, isn't it?
That's right. That's
That's
right.
right. Yeah.
Previously, what is now West Hill United Church will
Yeah.
be this, youth innovation space. And the wonderful thing is about how, at least my personal approach is always to look for the win-win. So West Hill will still continue, the church itself will still continue to have access to the space on Sundays for their congregational needs. And for outside of that, we will be putting on developing a full youth hub at that site.
Hmm.
So post COVID, even if COVID continues, we
Yeah.
already have plans in play. The employment center is actually launched last week virtually. And in stage 2 of the recovery, we plan to start going into person to person support, of course, looking at social distancing and being mindful of that. We do look at, one of the things that we've been reflecting on at the board level is that we've now decided to expand our emergency food programs till December, recognizing that even if we do recover in the fall, families are catching up.
Hmm.
Individuals are catching up, and
Right.
the food needs are still going to be, tremendous into probably early next year. So, we decided a couple months ago at the board that we would continue our programs into December, and now we're discussing looking at, so East Scarborough, in particular, KGO West Hill, has been, previous to my time here, I worked very closely with this food strategy out of the city of Toronto, the ministry, the public health department. And we did a lot of mapping over the years of where are the most food, highest population of food deserts, highest populations of food disparities. And you would know, but a lot of people across the city would be surprised to know that we have the highest, the highest population of individuals with diabetes are in this,
Right. Right. Well, I was talking about this very subject with Liz Bullard, and
yeah,
the unique health needs of the Scarborough population.
that's right.
And
That's right.
part it's driven by genetics, but in part
Yep.
it's also driven by
Social economic
food. Yeah,
disparity. Yep.
exactly,
That's right.
exactly.
Yeah.
I would dearly love to carry on this part of the conversation, but I can't let you go without some reflection from you on the recent turmoil
Mm-hmm.
in both south of the border and here.
Mm-hmm.
You are an activist. You are obviously, a person that cares deeply about social justice.
Mm-hmm.
I dare say that you have some reflections that would be, I think, very useful to hear on what's going on and how we're responding and where do we move. So I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Thank you for asking me to share that. I mean, realistically, obviously as a Black woman, there's a personal perspective. As a Black executive in the nonprofit sector, there's a whole professional perspective. And I think the most important one is as a parent. I'm the mother of 5 children. I have 3 sons, who 2 of which are men now. They're 22 and 22 and 20. Then the youngest,
Let me get this straight. You've got 5 kids
I do.
and a husband and a farm you're running, and you're running this thing.
That's why we need a farm job.
I so I know that there's, generally speaking, there's only 24 hours in a day. Have you figured this out? I mean,
No,
I don't
but
know how you handle
my
it.
older guys, they live downtown now. They're big. They're at one is at Ryerson and the other is at a York joint program with York.
Yeah.
So they're downtown together. So we really have what we call the bottom three. that are,
That's
that
funny.
are
Anyways, I shouldn't have interrupted you
no,
because I know you're
no,
very concerned about your boys.
no. And of course, very part of the reason why we made the choices that we made was to provide for our children an alternative experience to what they would have been fed, in the institutions that they take part in, and that what they would see in the environments of where we were living at the time. I think that right now, socially, consciously, we're at a paradigm shift around how we're actually going to act. I think you look historically from the 60s, 50s, there have been marches, there's been protests, but I think this is a generation that is about accountability, and an emerging generation behind them that are even more so, going to take account of how we actually turn the protests into change. And, we're seeing even a shift in the diversity of who's at the table calling for change, which is a very important thing. We talk about allyship, we talk about, all of these various strategies to bring the issues to the table. But the reality is that this is an issue, racism is a social construct. And if we don't deconstruct, this narrative from the very root as a collective community, meaning all peoples from all races, so-called races, if we can get it there,
Mm.
but races, genders, any walk of life, then we're not ever going to effectively dismantle, and then rebuild something that is truly purposeful and successful. And so, what I think we're seeing right now, when you ask about, my response, we put out a statement as a club that we will do our best, not even do our best, we will make it a priority for our staff to be accountable to how they interact, how they take, how they develop their person, so that they are effectively representing the club and all of our mandates around being, equitable. It's not okay anymore to just have it written down and check the mark. You actually have to walk the walk and talk the talk. And I think like I said, the generations, my generation, I think the generations that come after me are very much looking for accountability. So if this
Mhm.
is what you say the world is, then show me that on your day-to-day walk. And personally, I'm very proud to see, just, a lot of how the youth, and not just youth, it is really cross-generational, but really see how folks have been rising to the occasion. Um, for me, I'm very focused on the policy pieces that are coming out of this. I'm very focused. I'm an action-oriented person. I like to see, not just action but outcomes. So I'm really observing and working with those folks who are outcome oriented and looking for outcome a change as the true outcome.
Your your argument then is that this is an inflection point
Hmm.
because there is an expectation of accountability,
That's right.
um, and uh, and that's an interesting observation as opposed to previous manifestations of anger and frustration.
Hmm.
That enough with the talk, and now let's see where the walk goes. Um, Advice. Um, I get a lot of letters,
Hmm.
a lot of angry letters.
Of course.
Um, a lot of them focus on police activities, um, and there are days I just don't know how to respond to the letters. So um, again, if we could by some magic transform me into the good-looking Justin Trudeau, um, what would be your advice to him as to how to approach this?
Again, it's a simple statement of change begins with me. Like
Yeah,
I think it's very important, when we take that lens on how we approach change. I can't change you. I can't change the world if I don't change myself. And
mm,
in changing myself, I see the importance of working on my individual person, evolving my social consciousness around if I'm Justin Trudeau, my privilege, my power and my ability to make decisions. And what does that really mean? And I mean, I could never even completely grasp at his level of decision making, how you would go about, making things as equitable as possible when you still have a framework that sometimes holds a lot of these inequities in place. It's a lot of work, with my team here and any team that I work with, I always look at, we start from the inside out. It's not just checking the boxes, it's looking at how do we design our structure? How do we put guard dogs then, or put fail safes in place so that if we do falter, we have mechanisms in place to catch that,
yeah,
So
yeah,
um, with looking at, we've restructured our policies within the organization to reflect the needs of the local community. Now in our bylaws it says that you know our board has to have Indigenous representation, at least one seat or more on the board of directors. So it's not just a goal of ours as a board of directors to try and do that. We've made it a part of our mandate, and that's a way of us being accountable to ensuring that we have the proper reflection of the community as our cross reflection in our very governance of the organization.
yeah,
And you have to really do an assessment, like when we look at the history of policing, we can go all the way back to where communities, your police officers lived up the street from you, right?
right, right,
They were part of your community. A lot of the officers, that work in Toronto don't even live in Toronto, and worse, they don't live in the communities that they serve. So there's such a disconnect. And I'm not saying that's the one brush stroke, but we've really evolved. The original intention of this segment of society. And if we've evolved it, fine, but then you have to put in the pieces that still allow for accountability, and the community has to have a say in what that
yeah,
is.
yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I sometimes think that while the police issue is extraordinarily important, and is, if you will, the presenting issue,
Mm-hmm.
that we go down a bit of a rabbit hole
Yeah,
on that. That really the larger issue is looking in the mirror
that's right.
and saying, okay, I can deal with me,
Mm-hmm.
and I should deal with me, but that's hard work,
Yeah.
because I am who I am and you are who you are, and that is, well, that's, since I have an illusion of being perfect, this is very, very
Well,
difficult
this is
for me.
this is why you do it in a framework of a collective. So when we're
Yeah,
looking at an organization, we just went through, every year, quarterly, we have anti-oppression training.
mm,
And it's not just training. There's activities. We actually added it to our performance development for all staff within the organization. So every year, quarterly, there's going to be a conversation about your personal development needs around anti-oppression,
mm,
around anti-racism, around, all of the different isms, that
yeah,
exist as part of your performance development.
yeah,
And, I think we have to go as deep as these different tools that we use to manage and ensure that they are reflecting our positions as organizations, as leaders within the community. Because again, if you can't effectively serve the community, then it's a stalemate, right? You're not, and I think ultimately the goal should be looking at how we can dismantle a lot of the um, the various pieces that are holding a lot of this disgruntled response in place, and come for more of a collective approach. So include community thoughts and feelings and their ideas around how to hold these governing spaces accountable. And I
Yeah.
think you'll see a shift in the letters that you get, because
Well, I hope that's true,
yeah,
and it may be true over time.
yeah, over time.
Yeah.
It's been
Um,
a long time that we've been in one way, so it's going to take a long time to get back
no
to.
kidding. No kidding. We're going to have to unfortunately leave it there.
Yeah,
I always think that it's a good idea to leave it there when we have wise words from a wise woman. And it's very kind of you to make this time available. I think we can add you to the pantheon of saints in Scarborough. And I do think that you are a domestic-born saint as opposed to a foreign-born saint. But you are in very good company. But I can't actually end this without asking the name Utcha.
yes,
That's a, how should we say, unique name,
yes.
and I'm sure there's a unique story behind it. So what's the unique story about the unique name?
So it's a East African name, and it's actually Ucha short for Ucha Shirimra, and my it's my culture, my family, my spiritual tradition. We're given a spiritual name that is a name of meaning, and a name of meaning, but also a name of power. So every time you say it, it helps to build my life force. So the meaning Ucha. Ucha Shurima means she who submits to divine law to nurture and strengthen her life force. And, it's very important from the culture that I'm from that, your names have power, words have power, and that when you give a child a name, or when a child is born and they're given a name, or when they come into tradition and they're given a name, that the name reflects their destiny in life and what they're here to really accomplish. So there's,
Right.
yeah.
That that that's a great. I had this conversation about with Wisdom Teddy, the
Yes,
principal at UTSC.
yes.
How do you get the name Wisdom? You know, and in an interesting sort of way,
Mhm.
the name reflects the person. The person reflects the name.
That's right.
So that's you've just given a kind of an interesting insight into who you are by
Oh,
virtue of your name.
thank you very much.
So again, now that I'm having said it, we're going to leave the conversation. We really are going to leave the conversation.
Well, thank you
My
so much. Thank you and your team. We're so grateful to have a wonderful relationship with you, and thank you for inviting us, to share, inviting me to share what we are doing collectively here at East Scarborough Boys and Girls Club.
well, thanks so much, Ucha, and I want to appreciate you and appreciate the work that the East Scarborough Boys and Girls Club does. So, with that, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Take care. Have a good one. We're at the beginning of the week. Have the rest of the week. Take
Yeah,
care.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Bye.